Have you ever wondered how you make your decisions? Why do you sometimes act on instinct and other times analyze every detail? If I show you these two lines, which one do you think is longer? If you look closely, both lines are exactly the same length. The only thing that changes is the direction of the arrows. But most people say the second line is longer. The mind works with two different systems. One is automatic and the other is conscious. Most of the time, we think with the automatic one, and that can lead us to make mistakes simply because we don't analyze things carefully enough. The book Thinking Fast and Slow by psychologist and Nobel Prize-winning economist Daniel Kahneman shows that human beings are not as rational as we think. The main idea of the book is that our mind operates with two different systems, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is our fast, automatic mode of thinking. It is always running effortlessly, it is extremely fast, it processes information automatically, and it relies on the experience and knowledge we already have. System 1 is what we use every day when we drive along a familiar route, like going to work. We don't have to think about where to go because we do it automatically. On the other hand, System 2 is our slow, analytical, and conscious mode of thinking. It is very lazy and only activates when we have to do difficult tasks that require deeper attention and analysis, which makes it consume a lot of mental energy. If someone asks us what 2 plus 2 is, I think almost all of us would say 4 without even thinking. That is a System 1 response. But if someone asks us what 37 times 54 is, most of us would need to grab a calculator or activate System 2 and do the math in order to get the answer. The two systems complement each other, but even though System 1 is efficient and allows us to handle most daily tasks, it is also what makes us commit errors because it looks for mental shortcuts called heuristics that are not always correct. The brain uses these shortcuts to make difficult decisions easier. Let me give you some examples. Imagine this common situation. You go to a new restaurant, order one dish, and unfortunately you don't like it. It is very likely that you decide never to go back, even though you only tried one out of the 20 options on the menu. We usually draw conclusions from limited experiences. If you try a few other dishes on the menu, it is very likely that you will find one you like. The same thing happens when you bet on roulette. If you see the ball land on red 4 times in a row, you think that in the next round, black is more likely to come up. That conclusion comes from a very small sample of previous results, ignoring the fact that each spin is an independent event and the probability of red or black stays the same every time. This is known as the law of small numbers. It shows our tendency to believe that a small sample of data allows us to predict what is going to happen. This cognitive bias appears a lot in research, where people draw conclusions about an entire population based on studies with a small number of participants, which can lead to misleading results and incorrect generalizations. Now imagine that you go to a store with a budget of $100 to buy clothes. You see something you like, and the price tag says $150, which is above your original budget. But then you notice the price is crossed out and there is a 20% discount below it, bringing the final price down to $120. It is still above your budget, but the original $150 price acts like a magnet, and you end up buying the item, justifying it with the $30 you saved. When a first piece of information influences our decisions, it is known as anchoring. In the previous example, the initial $150 price would be the anchor, the reference point your brain begins with when analyzing the situation. Even though the real price is still above your budget, comparing it to the original $150 makes you buy it. This same principle shows up in all kinds of negotiations. When, in a job interview, they ask about your salary expectations, the first number mentioned, whether by the employer or by you, sets an anchor that influences the rest of the negotiation. If you say you want $1,500 and the employer had a budget of $3,000, they will negotiate the salary closer to $1,500. Being aware of this helps us draw our own conclusions about the value we give things. If we analyze carefully, maybe the item is not worth $120 because it is not the best quality, and that can lead us to look for other options that benefit us more. Another example is that the media influences us more than we think. When there is a plane crash, it appears on every news channel. That makes many people afraid of flying on a plane. But those same people drive their cars every day, and the reality is that the odds of dying in a car are much higher than the odds of dying in a plane. This is called the availability heuristic, and it is a mental shortcut our brain uses to predict the probability of an event based on how easily it can remember similar events. The easier something is to bring to mind, the more likely we think it is to happen. This is where the information you consume and your ability to analyze real statistics about the probability of something happening come into play. Taking the availability heuristic into account leads you to activate System 2 and carefully analyze a situation before drawing a conclusion or making a decision. You put your house up for sale for $300,000. You think the price is fair because of its sentimental value, the improvements you made to it, and what you have seen in the market. But the offers that start coming in are around $280,000. This is actually a good offer considering that the house cost you $200,000 and market prices are around $280,000, but your brain resists lowering your price. The idea of losing that $20,000 from your original asking price gives you a much stronger feeling of loss than the joy of finally selling the house and moving on with your life. This is known as loss aversion. It describes how the pain we feel when losing something is much stronger than the pleasure we feel when gaining an equal amount. In this case, the initial $300,000 price becomes a reference point or anchor, and any offer below that is seen as a loss, even if it is a reasonable price based on market conditions. This loss aversion can lead to irrational decisions. In the example of the house, holding on to the original price could mean the house stays on the market much longer, generating additional costs. Understanding how loss aversion works helps us choose better options that benefit us in the future. You want to get medical treatment for an illness. In which case are you more likely to go through with the treatment? If they tell you that out of every 100 people who get it, 90 are successful, or if they tell you that out of every 100 people who get it, 10 die? Both statements say exactly the same thing. A 90% success rate is the same as a 10% failure rate. Most people would accept the treatment if it is explained in the first way. The way information is presented has a huge influence on how we perceive risk and benefit. What I just explained is known as the framing effect. It describes how the same information, when presented in a positive way focused on gains, or in a negative way focused on losses, leads to very different decisions. The positive frame of 90 are successful creates a more favorable emotional response than the negative frame of 10 die. Even though both say the same thing, companies use framing all the time to manipulate us and increase the chances that we buy their products. Well, now that you know all this, the next time you face a decision that you believe is important, remember System 1 and System 2 in your brain. Activate your System 2 and ask yourself whether a mental shortcut is being used against you, and take the time to analyze what is really going on.